Listen, this, and you said it briefly earlier. I heard you say it. This goes back to Chip Dip Kelly. When Chip Kelly put him in the boiler room for a year and he got out, he said, I'm never going to allow this to happen. That's why when you see the coaches that he goes out and gets, right? Doug Peterson, first-time coach, wasn't even on anybody's radar. Nick Sirianni wasn't even on anybody's radar. He's going to make sure that ain't no coach coming in and going to do that to him again. That's why he's not going to get an established coach who's won somewhere else.
This is unbelievable. And I want to bring my boy Philly 500 in here now. Bro, I want to read you something.
You're fired up today, Dan.
Hey, dude, I want to read you this.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Did you hear it already?
Oh, yeah. I know exactly where you're going with it. Yes, so.
Let me read this to you here, and I want your spin on this. So this was a question that our John McMullen asked. When it comes to rotational positions, so not just D-tackle, DN, it's sort of the game planning of how we put everything together, how much room you have, how are you using that, do you communicate with Tracy Rocker? That's what John McMullen asked. Here's Jonathan Gannon's response. Yeah, and this is from the Eagle transcripts. Yeah, like this is from the press conference yesterday. Yeah, like we're talking about, I think last year, I think it's a good question. We set up the game plan a certain way and say, hey, we want to come out of the game and we want to look like this. We sit down with the head coach and with Eagles executive vice president, Howie Roseman, to go over the game plan. But then there's always room for us to go through the game plan together and try to put things in there so as the game unfolds. I'm going to stop because it's longer.
Right.
So the GM's involved in the game plan on defense. Let me get your thoughts on that.
It's Howie vision, baby. We're all just living in it. Nobody says it's good or bad. It could be whatever. This is the bad side of Howie Roseman. I'm not surprised by this one bit. Just going to tell you. Because if you remember when Doug was here, he had to have weekly meetings with Howie Roseman and the owner explaining his game plan. Why, you even though you won, why did you not throw enough, or why did you do this wrong? So this doesn't surprise me at all with Howie Roseman. This is the downfall of Howie Roseman. This is the negative when it comes to him. He's too involved in everything.
I think they're still having those Monday meetings.
Oh, I'm sure they are. Listen, this, and you said it briefly earlier. I heard you say it. This goes back to Chip Dip Kelly. When Chip Kelly put him in the boiler room for a year and he got out, he said, I'm never going to allow this to happen. That's why when you see the coaches that he goes out and gets, right? Doug Peterson, first-time coach, wasn't even on anybody's radar. Nick Sirianni wasn't even on anybody's radar. He's going to make sure that ain't no coach coming in and going to do that to him again. That's why he's not going to get an established coach who's won somewhere else, who has a pedigree, because he doesn't want somebody coming in and taking power from him in any way. And then when get this, when Doug Peterson wins the Super Bowl, and then last year Doug Peterson wanted more power, wanted more control. He's a Super Bowl winning coach. Said no, goodbye. He's not the coach anymore. That's what we get.
The performance by Gannon is not just a Lions game. It's 19 ball games now of the same stuff. And I call it this, Philly. I call it plug and play. And this is a reason why they're not customizing to the strengths of this defense. When you have a guy like Jim Johnson, or you have a guy like Buddy Ryan and Bud Carson and guys like that, they looked at the personnel. When Buddy was in Chicago, and I brought this up earlier, when you had Otis Wilson and Wilbur Marshall and Singletary, he looked at that and went like this. Now, what's the strengths of those guys compared to Steve McMichael, Richard Dent, and Dan Hampton? He customized the 46. This guy has a 43 defense or a 50 look or a 34, and he thinks you can just plug and play, which means this. Hassan Reddick will not be used right.
Yeah.
The defensive line is not bought in, and you saw it. They were getting knocked off the ball. I mean, do you think this gets better on defense?
No, because Well, I mean, I hope so, but I don't have a lot of confidence in it. As I said, he was my biggest concern going into the season. He remains my biggest concern. You have new players, a lot more talent on this defense than you did before, and it looked like the same defense a year ago. Exactly like the same defense. So I have my concerns. I have my worries. I think they blitzed 6 times out of
6 times.
That's ridiculous. I mean, especially in today's NFL, when you have teams that, basically the NFL has the offense always has the advantage, right? The offense gets all the breaks, all the calls. To me, the only way you really negate that is you get to the quarterback. You put pressure on the quarterback. Even if you're not sacking him, if you're hitting him, you're making him throw early. They were cushioned. They had their cornerbacks back, and they're rushing 4 at a time. Didn't make any sense to me, especially after they had 3 or 4 good series where they were bringing some pressure. They got us pick 6, and then they just stopped and went away for it. Didn't make any sense.
It didn't make any sense. I mean, well, there was a sequence of 3 series in a row. They blitzed, they stopped him, they moved Goff off his point. His situational play calling, you know what's crazy? I can't believe I'm going to say this. I think the issues, we'll get to the offense here in a minute. I think the issues on offense can be fixed. I'm not sure about this on the offensive side because Gannon's not going to change who his stripes are. This is who he is, right, Philly?
Yep. That's what I'm afraid of. That is what I'm afraid of. But there's a lot of new players on defense. You have a lot like Kaiser White. He looked good. At times he looked good. James Bradbury. You got Brandon Graham back. You got Jordan Davis, who they didn't use enough. And yet they looked exactly like the team out there on the field last year when they didn't have the pieces.
Absolutely. All right. Let me take you to some of the positives in this. I went back, Philly, and this was my take on Jalen, and tell me if you agree or disagree. My first initial on Monday, I wasn't impressed with the 56% completion percentage. And I'll get to AJ and all those guys. There were so many good things, too, that happened. But then I went back and looked, and I got to tell you, he put team ahead of his stats, and here's why. There were times that he was running down the sidelines, and he flicked the ball out of bounds because he didn't want to take the loss. So he sacrificed his completion percentage not to have negative yards. In my opinion, that shows me leadership, and I've got to be fair to that because, and I said this too, if Jalen Hurts is not in that football game against the Lions, those third downs that he just broke their will with, they don't win that game.
I agree. I thought I don't think Jalen Hurts was perfect, but I thought he was pretty good. I was happy with where he was after no preseason play, no mini camps, no all those things that they don't do that we talked about. I knew they were going to come out slow, and he came out 0 for 5, but I thought he settled down, and I thought he did a pretty good job. Now, I think he rushed 17 times, 8 of those were not planned. He had to go because there was a pressure. They were blitzing him a lot, and a lot of times he didn't have time. And I thought he did some really good things. So I was overall happy with Jalen Hurts.
Absolutely. Because when I went back and watched the game again, Philly, I mean, the offensive line, if you really want to go here, I thought they did well again, 200 some odd yards rushing the ball, but their pass protection, many of those plays he had to take off because he had a guy in his face.
He had to.
So, I mean, here, 17 carries. That means he would be on pace for 239 carries. Can't have that for a starting quarterback.
No, I think 8 of those they said were where he basically left the pocket because of the pressure. So I don't think they were like planned or designed runs or anything like that. I still think 8's too much because I'm afraid, it's mainly because the shots he takes. He takes a lot of hits. And I think, part of it is the refs. I mean, there were 3 or 4 calls where he was getting hit after sliding. And that all led to the bigger hit that came in the second half. And it wouldn't happen if they would have called the penalty. So I want to see him better protected. You know what I mean?
I actually think, Philly, that the older NFL referees have a tougher time legislating how they're going to ref guys who are running quarterbacks. And I think they allow more on the hits to the quarterback than the newer referees do because I agree with you. He's still a quarterback. You have to protect him. I get he has to get down and learn to slide a little better. He's got to take more lessons. To me, I'd go get somebody with the Phillies and teach him how to slide because he needs to get down there. All right. Did you feel T.O.-ish when you watched A.J. Brown play?
Absolutely. That's exactly who I thought of. Yeah, definitely. Definitely T.O.-ish. I mean, he looked bigger, faster, stronger than every other defensive player out there on the field. He was fantastic, I thought, I mean, how could you complain about the game he played?
Absolutely not. Now, are you concerned that Devontae didn't have any catches? And if you want to go with the other 6 guys that did catch footballs, it came to 8. AJ had 10. So it wasn't really spread out a lot. But then again, to help Jalen here and to go back on some of the stuff I said on Monday versus Tuesday and Wednesday here, to me, he didn't really have the time to get the ball in a second progression because of the pressure.
Right.
You think this gets rectified with a better performance?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people worried about this. Devontae Smith did catch a pass. He didn't catch. I think Devontae Smith is a stud. I said I thought he was going to lead the team in catches going into the season. I think it was just one of those things where they're blitzing, bringing pressure early, and they started running a lot of those quick slants to A.J. Brown, and then you get 5-6 more yards running, and then they eventually went over the top with him. But I just think it was one of those things. I don't expect this to happen every week. I think Devontae will be more involved next week. Now, if we get to like 3-4 weeks and he's got 15 catches on the season, then I'll say, yeah, there's a problem.
I agree. I think that gets rectified. How about the way Miles Sanders, and how important do you think that guy's going to be this year if he plays the way he did against the Lions?
Oh, he was fantastic. Especially that late run where I thought he got tied up and he broke free for like 24 yards. And then they pull him, and then he doesn't come back in the game the rest of the time. I don't think they use Miles Sanders enough. That's just my opinion. Now, I know
you think he needs 25 carries a game?
I don't know 25, but I'd like him to get about 20 touches. You know what I mean? Maybe 15 carries, another 5 out of the backfield catching. But I think he's a dangerous weapon. There's not a lot of guys that can break an 80-yarder at any time. And a guy like that, you got to get him the ball. So I know Miles is a good player. He's just got to stay healthy.
And there's no question. And the way he ran, too, you could see he's running with a purpose, too. It's a 31 team audition for 18 weeks, too. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, especially if this guy ends up the year with 1,200 yards. And I would say this to you, that maybe they had more designed run plays for him, but because of the inability, Philly, of the offensive line to stop the pass protection, and they didn't do a very good job against that Lions front, maybe, again, that's probably some of the reason why we didn't see more carries for the kid, because Jalen had to take it on his own back to really carry the mail when it came to the running game.
Yeah, could be. I mean, you might be right. All I know is that they won, and they better be a lot better next week, because Minnesota will beat them if they play the same way.
Okay, what about this game? How do you look at this game here with the Vikings here? Because I'll tell you what, it's a divisional game. Could you have a letdown? I don't know. The new coach and the players in there know that Green Bay was their nemesis, the same way the Cowboys are the Eagles' nemesis. So can you imagine? I would imagine in that building, they're saying this: if we beat the Packers and the Eagles in weeks 1 and 2, you're going to look at Minnesota in a whole different light, aren't you?
Absolutely.
If you have a 2-0 record. So that's a high-powered offense, and I thought they beat the Packers up.
They from what I saw, they beat the crap out of the Packers. Yeah. I think it's a tough game, and my fears are all on defense, right? How are you going to stop Dalvin Cook when you were so piss poor versus Swift? How are you going to stop Justin Jefferson? And how are you going to get pressure on Kirk Cousins, a guy who will give up the ball if you put pressure on him? You've got to get pressure on him. I think Fletcher Cox and Hargrave got to be a lot better than they were. Okay, I thought Williams and Jordan Davis were almost more effective with less snaps.
I'm going to end this with this here, and I want your opinion. I saved it to the end. I think it's a fundamental mistake. They paid him $14.4. That guy, Fletcher Cox, is not a $14.4 million a year player. I don't think he should be starting. I could get, like you said, the same out of Milton Williams. And by the way, Jordan Davis, I don't want to hear he's out of shape. You're a professional. Right. You're not on scholarship anymore, man. You got to when that kid's in the game, I thought they were better against the run. That guy's got to play more. And think of this, Philly. You got 12-9 lined up in Hargrave, and you've got 14-4 lined up in Fletcher. You almost have $30 million lined up and 2 players in the middle, and they played like shit.
Yeah, I know. Hey, well, you've seen, really truthfully, if we're honest, Fletcher Cox over the last few years has declined in his play. It has declined. He's not the same guy he was a few years ago. As far as Jordan Davis goes, I mean, how are you going to get the guy in shape? They're off again today, aren't they? It's the second day they've been off. So when's he going to get in shape?
Yeah, today's kind of players' day off. They usually get today, but then they're off on Wednesday, and I get it. They get the extra day. But, man, I mean –
I think Jordan Davis needs reps.
They need reps. And they need to be in better shape.
Yeah.
I agree. Get this, too. Come Monday night, that guy Cousins, he may throw the ball 50 times. You better have your ass in shape, man, because rushing the passer, you got to be in shape for that kind of stuff. And when you got Justin Jefferson, hey, you think he has a big day against the Eagles?
I think he'll have I think he'll get his. I think he'll have an okay day. I don't think it's going to be as big as it was last week.
I don't know. They're
we can only hope. We're hoping. We're hoping.
Hey, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm buying that.
I don't know if I'm buying it either. Listen, I don't know. Thank you, my man.
For Big Sills. Thank
awesome.
you, brother.
Thank you, man. Have a good one.
You got it. That is my man, Philly 500. Make sure you check out his podcast, too. It is electric, and it is awesome. We appreciate him finding time for us always. Hey, do me a favor, guys. Morgan & Morgan, where the fee is free. Promise me this, man, that if you're ever hurt or injured on the job, man, you look at Morgan & Morgan to represent you and your family. We absolutely suggest this to you because for the last 30 years, they have collected over $13.5 billion for their clients, protecting them from fender benders to the biggest cases on the planet with the biggest law firm in America. Over 800 strong in Philly, New York, and in Florida. Nobody will defend your family like Morgan & Morgan. Call them at 800-512-1600. That's 800-512-1600. The call is free. The consultation's free. And when you call Morgan & Morgan, tell them Big Sil sent you.
When choosing a lawyer for your injury case, you may ask, does the size of the law firm matter? Well, of course it does. The insurance company, they're huge with unlimited resources. And whether your case is big or small, they're built to bully you out of the money you're owed. But here's the good news. We're big too, the biggest actually. And we're built to fight to make them pay for all that was taken from you. Size is our strength. There's only one Morgan & Morgan, forthepeople.com.